Put your hands up! Put your hands up! This is a shootout! I'm gonna show you how to use Lambda, AWS Lambda. It's a tutorial shootout! Now you might be thinking to yourself, who is this guy and why do I need to know AWS Lambda? Well, I am a software engineer currently. I hold 6 AWS certifications, all the associates, and a bunch of specialties. And I use Lambda at work pretty much on a day-to-day basis for all of our services. So I feel like I'm pretty used to using it, and I've used it for years, it feels like. And it has been years. So I feel like I'm qualified to teach you how to use at least the basics of Lambda. As to why you should use Lambda, I believe Lambda is the future of almost all software engineering because you can use it to do almost everything. Because instead of having a server run constantly, you can just call a Lambda function, maybe attached to an API gateway, so that you can compute some kind of thing that you want to do. You want to have an API that gets something from DynamoDB, another AWS service, you can do that. You want to get something out of S3 buckets or storage, you can do that. And it's really cheap, it's really easy to use, so let's get to it. And of course, the first step to learning Lambda is triple-clicking that like button for the YouTube algorithm, because it'll help me out a lot, and I put a lot of effort into these kind of videos. That will be helpful, thanks. All right, so here we are in the AWS console. So Lambda is, of course, in the computes, because it's going to compute some code. So let's click there, or you can have it up here like I did. So it's easy to create a function, but there's a dashboard to see if you have any functions here. And of course, you can see all the metrics that you might have. But anyways, let's just create a function. So this is a tutorial. So if you really need to do something like on the fly real quick, you can do like, there's serverless app repositories which have the whole app built in. We can use a blueprint. And like these are oftentimes like built by other people or Amazon specifically. But we're just going to offer some from scratch. So let's do something like get from S3, because maybe that's like one of the most common use cases. We want to get a file from, or once a file from, or what's called event from S3. So once a file gets uploaded to S3, a really common use case, I've seen this be used many times across different projects I've worked on, is that once a file gets uploaded to S3, you want to have an event to run in like a Lambda function on it to maybe do processing or run some other script on it. So after you name it, of course, you can choose your runtime. So you have all the latest supported languages like Java, Node.js, JavaScript, Python, Ruby, of course, .NET, Java, and these are all older ones, of course. You can also use custom runtime. So if you don't like any of these languages, you can have a default bootstrap or provide your own bootstrap. And then, of course, you can have an execution role. But we're just going to create a new role. But you can use an existing role, like if you have one. I have some here, but I'm not going to do that. Or I can create a new role from some policy templates. Or, yeah. And I accidentally just showed you my email there, but I'll just probably edit that out. OK, so we're going to create the function now. And then it'll take a second to create. It'll have like some very basic stuff in it. All right, so here we are. This is once you create the function, you'll have the Lambda function name. You can add a trigger. You can add a destination. And then, so this is the configuration. So you can also add permissions based on what roles you want to add. And then you can also add, or this is the summary. So by action and by resource. And then you can monitor, which is very useful. And we probably will use that later. Like whenever I want to console log something or test something in Lambda, I can view the logs in CloudWatch. So let's go on to so that was designer. We're going to add a trigger later. But right now, I just want to show you the rest of the Lambda. Give you a good overview. So there's function code. So this is where you can just type it in here, or you can just upload it from a zip file, or we can get it from an S3 bucket. And like we can have the code uploaded to an S3 bucket, which is great. But we'll just edit in here once we do that. So we can add environment variables, like if we want to have like some kind of database password and stuff like that. Tags would be very useful for billing to know like what is being billed what. So X-ray, we can have active traces record timing and error information for a subset of invocations. So this would be helpful with debugging things, and we're suddenly in the X-ray console. So you would use X-ray if you want to really know what's going on, like at a deeper level, but we're not going to use that right now. So there's basic settings here. You can edit this to see how, oh, so this is very important. So you can add a description for basic settings, but you could add more RAM or more memory that is allocated to the CPU that is running the Lambda function. So this is very important because oftentimes some of these Lambda functions might require a lot of computational power. So adding more memory will of course help there, but there is a limit of only 3,000 megabytes. So maybe they'll upgrade that in the future once eventually. But you usually don't need that much memory for Lambda functions because they're very quick most of the time. So you can also have a timer, and the default, of course, 3 minutes or 3 seconds. But you can add up to, I believe it's 15. Oh, yeah, it is 15 minutes. So 15 minutes is the highest amount of timeout. But I would note here, if your Lambda functions are taking that long to run, then I feel like there's an issue here in the design. So they usually shouldn't last more than 30 seconds to a minute most of the time, I'd say. All right, so you also have your existing role that you can select here if you want to change that. I'm going to put the memory back to 128 megabytes because what we're doing is very simple, and 3 seconds should be fine as well. Oh, you have to have minutes. All right, so let's continue going through this. So we can change which VPC we're going through if we want to change like who can connect to it based on the networking, but we're not going to do that right now. Concurrency, so unreserved account concurrency. So this is kind of for like how many can happen at the same time. So right now it's default to 1,000. So we can also change to reserve concurrency. So default is 0. So it's always going to be throttled, but we'll just use unreserved, the default. And then we have asynchronous invocations here. So let's take a look at this. So this is where we can have the retry. So we can change the maximum age of an event. So this is the amount of time to keep unprocessed events in the queue, but 6 hours is the default, with 2 retry attempts being the maximum. And dead letter queues, also a very important thing to understand. So this is basically if something fails, we can send this to a queue so that the processed events, or the unprocessed events, so this is if something fails, you can send like the unprocessed events to a queue or an SNS, or a simple queue service or a simple notification service, so that they could be processed in the future again and potentially, hopefully, fail, or succeed, sorry. You don't want them to fail. And you'll do that so that they're not forgotten about. And yeah, that's basically most of the stuff here. There's also database proxies. All right, so we want to, of course, add a trigger to S3 buckets. So once we add an item to S3, to a bucket in S3, then we'll be able to do something with it. So let's create a bucket, just a simple one. So we'll say this, event trigger lambda like this video, please. All right. So we could just go through the steps, or we can just click create, which I'll just do because this is not a S3 tutorial. So we have the bucket there, so we can go back to Lambda. Boom, biggity boom. And then we can click, this is very simple, we click add trigger button. So we select the trigger. So we can add many different services as a trigger. They have a lot of different services, some that are not even with AWS. So for example, they have a bunch of these cool services. So partner services. So MongoDB, very popular DB for, I guess, databases, stuff like that. Yeah. But we are going to use S3. So we can select the bucket here, really easy. And I think this was this one. Yeah, event trigger lambda like this video, please, was the bucket name. Event type. So we're going to say all object create events, but we could also do something like if we delete an event, or we can permanently delete something, delete a marker. So that's if we have versioning enabled on the bucket. If we have Glacier, we can use stuff like that. Yeah, so but we're just going to do all object create events. Then we can have prefix and suffix. So for example, this could be like the file location in the bucket. So if that has a name, we can do that. And then we can enable the trigger or create a disabled state for testing, which we're just going to have it enabled. So that should be added. There we go. So now, once we call this, we should be able to, or once we add something to this bucket, this Lambda should ideally run. All right, so now I want to edit the code for the Lambda. And I want to do this because once we add something to the S3, we want to see if this Lambda is working. So one way we can do this is we can just do a console log in the Lambda. So we can say this Lambda works. And then once we can save up here. So we can also test up here, I forgot to mention. But we can create a test event. So let's say hello world. And so this is where we can configure the inputs to the function if we want to do that. But we don't have any inputs. We're just calling it from a Lambda. So event name is test create. And then we'll just click test. And then boom, we have hello from Lambda being called. And then we can go to monitoring, of course. And then we can see the logs in CloudWatch once they load. And here's the log stream. So if we click here, we can see, hey, this Lambda works. Nice. So now let's try it from S3. All right, so now we are at the bucket. And to upload something to the bucket, you could click this upload button, and you can add a file. Or you can just drag and drop from somewhere else into S3. Boom. Free AWS, just a JPEG. This is one of my, I guess, thumbnails. So let's see what this is. Oh, we can't see because we don't have permission. That's okay. And then if we go back to the CloudWatch logs, you'll see that there is a new event. And of course, it has worked because this Lambda function has run. But of course, you can do much more complex stuff with Lambda. And let me see if I can show you that. So I do want to show you one more thing. So you can console log the event to see what is happening in the event. So maybe you can get like the file name or the file location or stuff like that, kind of like that, so you can process it. So I tried this, and then I uploaded a new file to CloudWatch, and, oh, not that way. And you can see that CloudWatch logs, or in CloudWatch logs, and you can see this is the like event structure. So it has records. You can see what version, the event source, which is of course S3, and this could be anything like Kinesis or anything. And the region, the time that it had, and then the name. So for example, we put something into the bucket, the identity, and then request parameters, response elements, and S3. These are all objects. And then we can get more from that, like the name. So if we go and try records.s3, we can like drill down into that. So if we go back to the AWS Lambda dashboard, you can see the number of invocations that we have. So we have 2 here because we called it twice. And then you can see error count, so we don't have any errors, which is good. And this is all very useful information, especially if you're doing this like in a production-like environment where this kind of really matters. You can also see the duration, how long this took. So 75 milliseconds, 40 milliseconds. So that really shows you how fast Lambda can be, and it's really awesome. Anyways, that is the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you could subscribe to me, and that'll help a lot. Thank you. I'll talk to you later. Peace.